So let's start with logging the user out and clearing the data. For that, in the logout action, besides committing this, we should also reach out to local storage and remove the token and also remove the user ID. Now that was the easy part. The more tricky part is that we want to log the user out automatically if the token expired. And for that, we got this token expiration, which we aren't really using at the moment though. Now, when we do log in here, like this, in the data which we get back from Firebase, as you can see in their docs, we also get the expires in field, which is a text, but actually holds the number of seconds in which the ID token expires. I can tell you by default that will be 3,600 seconds, which is an hour. Now we want to store that expiration date, not the duration because that doesn't help us, but the expiration date in the future when the token becomes invalid whenever we do log the user in. So here in our auth action where we send the request, when we store that data in local storage, we now also want to derive the expiration date, which is a date in the future, which is the current date plus the amount of seconds until the token expires. So for that, we can get the current date by calling new date. That gives us the current timestamp. But now I want to add something here. And actually for that, I will call getTime to get the current timestamp in milliseconds. And I want to add the expiration time, the expiration duration in milliseconds. So for that, I'll add expires in and get that from response data dot expires in times 1000. And ensure that this is converted to a number by adding a plus here. So that is then converting the string to a number. Then, since this is in seconds, I multiply it with 1000 to have it in milliseconds. And then I can add expires in here to expiration date to have a new expiration timestamp in milliseconds, which will be in the future. Current time plus that duration. And it's this expiration date which now also has to be stored in local storage. So here I set a new item, which is the expiration, which is called token expiration, which is that expiration date. And here we now also store that in UX, the expiration date. Actually, we don't even need it in UX because local storage is enough. It only matters to us when we reload the page. So we don't need to commit it here. And in the mutation, we can actually also get rid of it here. And in try login, we therefore also don't need to set this anymore. Instead, now we store it in local storage, but I want to do one other key thing. I want to set a timer whenever the user is logged in so that we automatically log the user out if that timer expires. And that's something I will also do here in the auth actions. I will set a new timeout here where I have my expires in, so this time in milliseconds, as a duration. And after that duration, this function will execute. And in this function, I will simply dispatch the logout action because that's what I want to do if the token expires. I also want to make sure that I only have one timer active at a time. So I will actually add a global variable here, timer, which I use to hold my timer like this. And then we can use this timer variable from anywhere in this file to clear the timer. And I want to clear it whenever we log out. When we log out, I want to call clear timeout and pass this timer variable to it to clear the ongoing timer. For example, if we manually clicked the logout button, then I also want to clear the logout timer. I also, of course, want to remove the token expiration item from local storage if we do log out. And also not commit this anymore because we don't store token expiration in Vuex anymore. So now we got this timer set whenever we logged in here. We also need to set this timer when we automatically log in. Then we need to check how much expiration time is left and set a new timer to that time. So that's why I'm storing token expiration in local storage. So here I can get my token expiration by accessing local storage get item, token expiration. And that will now be a timestamp in the future. So we now need to get the difference between that timestamp and the current time, which I'll again store in a constant named expires in, which is that token expiration converted to a number by adding a plus minus the current time as a timestamp in milliseconds. So that will then be the difference in milliseconds between this time in the future, when the token expires, and the current time. And of course, if expires in should be negative here, then we don't even need to log the user in. We could even argue that if it's smaller than, let's say, 10,000, so smaller than 10 seconds, that even then logging the user in makes no sense. But I will go with smaller 0 here. And if expires in is smaller than that, then the token is definitely invalid. So then in that case, I will just return here and not continue with logging the user in, because the timer expired, there is no need to continue here. Otherwise though, if the timer is positive, if we have enough time left, if the token is still valid, I again will set a timer here with expires in as a duration. And just as on my other timer, in this function, I'll call context dispatch logout and store that timer in the timer variable. Okay, so theoretically that should work. In order to test it, I will manually tweak this expiration time a bit. And when we log in, I will not set it to the actual expiration duration which we have, but instead I'll duplicate this and comment out the correct one and just set it to 5 seconds. So now after 5 seconds we should be logged out. So if we give this a try and reload and log in here, that works, but after 5 seconds we shouldn't be logged in anymore. And that looks good. The UI switched to not logged in state. That should also work if I reload the page in between. So if I reload, I'm still logged in, but still this should then update, and it does. Now one problem we have with this solution can be seen if I visit a protected page like requests. If I'm logged out, I now stay on this page. So we should ensure that we redirect the user if we automatically log the user out. And to achieve this redirecting upon auto logout, I will add a new action, which I name auto logout, where I get my context and where I will dispatch the regular logout, but where in addition, I will also commit another mutation which we have yet to add, which I'll name did logout. And in this mutation, did logout, I'll set a new state, did logout, to true. And that's some state we first of all want to add to our main state here in the auth index.js file. Did logout initially is false. Maybe name it did auto logout to be clearer. I will also name it did auto logout here when I update it, and name the mutation did auto logout. Maybe also name it set auto logout to be in line with the other mutation. And then in actions dispatch set auto logout. Now what's my idea here with that auto logout thing which I now set? That should be set when the auto logout action is dispatched. So now in the timer, I want to dispatch auto logout here and also in the other place where I create the timer. And the idea is that now in app view, we can add a watcher and watch this auto logout. For that, we just need to add a getter, did auto logout, where we get our state, where return state dot did auto logout. So that state which I'm setting in this mutation, returned by this getter. And in app view, we can then add a computed property, did auto logout, where I return this store getters did auto logout. And then we can watch this did auto logout computed property, receive the new value or the current value and the old value. And we can now check if current value is true. So if we did auto logout and current value is not the same as the previous value, so it did change and it is now true, then we can use the router to redirect to /coaches, let's say. With that, when we automatically log the user out, we redirect to coaches. So if we now give this a try, and we are on /requests, we are redirected to coaches. So now with that, that would be one way I can think of that should help us redirect the user here. Now with that auto logout approach and this mutation where I changed it auto logout, I also want to make sure that I change this if we log in again. So if we set a user again, then did auto logout is set to false again, so that the next time it switches to true, we also trigger this watcher again. This watcher will then run if it's true and changed, and therefore we need to change it back, otherwise it would never change again. I also noticed that, of course, now here in index.js of the auth module, we can get rid of the token expiration here because we're not really using it in our Vuex state, but that's just a side note. With that, we get the auto logout functionality added, and therefore in the auth actions, I want to switch back that expires in time to the real time, which is of course longer than 5 seconds. So that now if we log in, we actually should stay logged in and we can interact with this application and, for example, send a message to another coach, or also send a message to ourselves. Hi there, which we now can also see under requests. So that's now auto log in, so that we can reload and stay logged in, and auto log out added to this application. And therefore, we now added all the key building blocks which you need to add authentication to a Vue app.